Okay, so today I'd like to go ahead and show you how to recode a variable within SPSS. As you can see here, I've gone ahead and opened the SPSS software, and I have opened the ANES dataset. So the variable that we're going to be working with today for illustration purposes is this variable called natnews here at position 8. So as you can see here in the label column, this variable is simply asking the respondent how many days during the past week did they watch national news on television. So if we go over here to the values column and click on the ellipsis here, we can see how that's coded currently. So what we can see is that a 0 means they didn't watch it at all, a 1 means they watched it 1 day, 2 days, etc. through 7, which means they watched it every day last week. And then 8 means that they didn't know, and 9 means that they refused. So those two are going to be missing data. So we'll go ahead and cancel out of that. So let's go ahead and recode this variable. So right now it's how many days during the past week they watched national news, but we just want to know whether they watched national news last week at all. We don't care how many days, just did you watch it or not. So let's go ahead and go up here to the file bar and click transform. We're going to come down here to this option to recode into different variables, and you'll notice that just above that is the option to recode into same variables. For our purposes in this class, we're going to avoid that simply because we don't want to actually change the data that we have for ANES. So we'll just add variables to it when we recode, but never actually change the existing variables. So let's go ahead and click this recode into different variables. And you can see that we're going to get this box here asking us to choose a variable. So let's go down and select our natnews variable, which is right there. We'll click the arrow and slide it over. So the first thing we need to do is we need to give our new variable a name. So we're going to call this natnewsR. That R just stands for recoded. So we'll know that it's the same thing, just recoded. So now we need to give it a label, so let's just say watched any national news last week. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click change. Now you can see here that the old variable is called natnews, the new variable is called natnewsR. So the next thing that we need to do is click this button down here that says old and new values so that we can actually do the recoding. So you'll notice here that on this side of the box everything deals with the old value, and over here is the new value. So on our old variable, you'll recall that a 0 meant that the respondent hadn't watched any national news last week. So we want that to go ahead and still be a 0 on our new variable. So once we have that, we just click add. So if they watched it 1 day last week, we want to say that they did watch it, so we'll click add. If they watched it for 2 days, we still just want them to be a 1 because, again, we don't care how many days they watched it, we just care whether or not they did. So we'll click add. So we could keep going on and doing this, for 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, so on and so forth. But that's actually rather inconvenient. So fortunately, SPSS has this selection down here for range. So we can actually take care of all of that at once. We can say 1 through 7. We want to be a 1 on the new variable. And click add, and you see that appear here. So let's just go ahead and remove these. So now we've taken care of those. The last thing we have to do is just say that if you were system or user missing on the old variable, we want you to go ahead and be system missing on this variable also. So we'll click add, and we just need to click continue. So everything's done in here. We'll click OK. So this is going to take us to the output window, and that's just going to tell us in the syntax what it did. It's not actually going to show us anything else because we didn't ask for anything. But just to see what this new variable looks like, let's go ahead and check a frequency distribution. So to do that, we'll go up here to Analyze, to Descriptive Statistics, and Frequencies. So we'll come down here to our variable. So let's go ahead and select our new variable, but let's also select the original variable that we started with. And I'll kind of explain that in just a moment why we want to do that. So let's click OK. So first we're going to see the frequency distribution for whether or not they watched any national news last week. That's our new variable. So what we should see is that the 0 for people who didn't watch any should be the same on both. And we can see that that is in fact the case. And then the other thing should be that anybody who was a 1 to a 7 here, if we add those up, we should get 942. And that actually is the case. So this tells us that we recoded correctly. We've just kind of collapsed all of those responses for the number of days into a single response that says, yes, I did watch national news. This is really useful if you don't quite need the specificity that a particular variable offers. You can simply recode it, and that is how it's done in SPSS.